Lena Kaufman did not die of unnatural causes, that there was no homicide, that there was no murder. She died of natural causes.
You probably recognize that face, right? Right now, there's some new testimony in the so-called spray tan murder trial. You were just hearing from Fox News contributor and famous forensic pathologist Dr. Michael Baden testifying today that Lena Kaufman was not a victim of murder. Her husband, Adam Kaufman, on your screen now, is charged with strangling her. Her body was found on the floor of their bathroom back in 2007. At first, Kaufman said his wife died after suffering an allergic reaction to a spray tan. That's how this case first came on our radar. Then the defense claimed she had a heart condition. So where are we now as the defense takes up this case? Let's bring out our guest. You have Faith Jenkins, a former prosecutor, and John Manuelian, a criminal defense attorney. So Faith, you're listening to that as a prosecutor. Dr. Baden, one of the most famous forensic pathologists out there. What does that mean for the prosecution's case?
I mean, it's hard. I mean, the prosecutors in this case, they know it's not about what they believe happened. It's about what they can prove. And anytime they have the burden of proof, the defense, they don't have to put on any evidence. But in this case, they have. They've decided to rebut the prosecutor's theory and bring forth this expert who's offering significant testimony about the way they believe the victim in this case died. And if the jury gives any kind of credence and credibility to that, that's a real problem for the prosecution.
John, big win here?
Yeah, I think they're showing a plausible factual scenario, and they're showing that there's another theory to it that the prosecution's not showing. And as long as the jury could harness that and digest that, I think that might be enough for an acquittal.
I'm just curious as your opinion as a defense attorney, because the defense made that argument about the spray tan in public before this case went to trial. The jury probably, they weren't there present for that. Whether or not they heard about that is another story. But what do you make of the defense making that argument way back at the beginning of this case and now just completely abandoning it?
Well, I don't think the defense really did their homework on spray tan, because those of us who have had spray tan know it's mostly sugar and there's nothing toxic about it.
Are you admitting to spray tan here, John? And said, but I never had this before. All right, you can just plead the fifth on that.
It's not a good defense, and I'm sure that's why they backed away from it. But I'm sure they want to put something out there in the public to sort of backtrack on the possibility of homicide. But again, this is the battle of the experts. It's who you're going to believe. And if you believe one expert, especially Michael Baden, then obviously it's going to be helpful to the defense.
I also think the defense is now going with this theory because you've had the victim's mother now testify about certain physical ailments that her daughter was suffering from. And I think that now this expert is sort of backing that up and buttressing that testimony, and it's all consistent, and they're hoping that that will create a reasonable doubt in the jury's mind.
Faith, what about motive? Is that something that the prosecution has effectively argued for? I've painted a picture what the motive potentially could be for this man to kill his wife?
No, and that's a problem. You don't have to have motive in criminal cases, but it's always good because jurors want to know, well, if this man who doesn't have a criminal record and who by all accounts is a law-abiding citizen committed this horrible crime, why? That's the issue with this case. Really, the prosecution has to rest their case on their chief medical examiner. And
that chief medical examiner, John, took 18 months. He said he was extremely thorough before saying this was a homicide. He did everything, entertained every single possibility. And he says, in his professional opinion, without a doubt, after all that research, this is a murder.
Why did it take him 18 months? Why did it take him so long?
Prudent.
That's what he says.
He was being prudent.
18 months of prudence? That's a long time.
Is that typical? I mean, have you both seen cases like that where a medical examiner would take that long?
It wouldn't take.
This is the first time I've heard of it.
I've done many homicide cases. My homicide cases don't take 18 months, perhaps a month or two, but not 18 months. Look at the Michael Jackson case. It didn't take 18 months to rule out a homicide.
Well, very high profile.
Here's what's unexplainable in this case and what the defense is, the expert, I don't think he is really able to address. According to the chief medical examiner, the injuries that the victim sustained on her neck were a result of applied significant pressure for at least 2 minutes, 2 constant minutes. And so that really goes against what he's saying in terms of how she got the injuries by hitting her neck.
But also the experts on the defense are showing that it's possible that if she fell onto the magazine rack and the magazine rack caused those injuries to the neck. So I think it's reasonable doubt.
Well, we all have our expert opinions as well, right? After watching CSI and Law and Order, I'm just sure the jury's hanging on every little nuance out there. Nice to have you both in the studio.
Thank you.
John, you're going back to LA. Any spray tans in your future, anything like that?
Anytime soon, no.
Just checking. Nice to have you guys here.
Thank you, Jenna.
Great to have you with us. John?